deep dive interviews with music gear inventors, builders, creators, and tone chasers. The Gear Gab Podcast with Eric Dahl uncovers the behind-the-scenes stories of the music gear that inspires us. And now, here's your host, Eric Dahl.
Thank you for joining Gear Gab. We've got a treat. We have a talented, world-renowned designer and luthier, and I've known this guy for a lot of years since he launched his own company in 2009. Joe Knaggs, thanks for coming on the show, Joe.
Well, thank you for having me, Eric. It's a real pleasure.
Well, it's so much fun. I keep up with everything that you and your team are doing on social media, and I love it when you kind of take us behind the scenes in the workshop in Knaggs. But I want to also talk about it, and we got to bring up Keeper Wolf also, so we'll talk about that. But you were born in Washington, D.C., Joe, and you were you started out kind of being the musician before you got into the guitar building, correct?
That is correct. Yeah. I started playing the guitar when I was 11 years old.
Wow.
I was playing Neil Young tunes and America and these kind of things, which I was very fascinated with the guitar. I actually like to say this. I actually got fascinated with music. I remember hearing Good Vibrations from the Beach Boys on my sister was playing it.
Oh,
I was about 5 years old. And it's to this day, I just hear it come on and I absolutely love it. It's a pretty strange song, actually.
It was so far ahead of its time, the way Brian Wilson was doing that with those sounds to where, it was kind of cutting edge back then.
Yeah, it was a pretty wild tune, but I had nothing. I knew nothing. I just remember hearing it, and I remember hearing the organ. And anyway, but really, I started really getting fascinated with the guitar at like around 10 or 11. I was playing pool in my buddy's house, and I heard an acoustic guitar, and I think it was a 12-string, and I think it was off of Desperado, Eagles Desperado, and I just remember hearing that sound, and it just really fascinated me. So I started kind of learning that and learning I wanted to learn what the guitar was, and I got an acoustic guitar and I started playing at 11.
So what was the first acoustic guitar you had?
I had a Nagoya acoustic. Well, it was a Dreadnought copy,
Yeah, I remember those.
And quite frankly, it was a really good guitar.
Yeah, for knockoffs, those were not bad back in the day.
They were fantastic. What I remember of it.
Yeah, it's much better than mine. My first acoustic was a J.C. Penney special, and that was not a good guitar, and it was not good on the fingers, Joe.
Yeah. I remember looking through those catalogs, the J.C. Penney one, and it was funny how you used to look through the catalog and go right to the music section, where
every time, and then mark the stuff that you liked.
Right, exactly, yeah.
So, at what point? From playing guitar and hearing the music and everything, at what point do you decide I need to start building one of these?
So really, to be quite honest with you, I never said I need to start building guitars. I was playing very seriously, like 6-8 hours a day, like a lot of us did back then.
Yep.
I hear dealers where you're like, all of a sudden they pick up a guitar and you're like, Jesus, man, you can play. Wow. And there's so many people who can play so well.
Oh yeah.
But I was playing seriously, and I brought my Stratocaster to Paul. I knew Paul growing up. Him and I grew up in Bowie, Maryland on Long Ridge Lane. We were both, maybe 10, 12 houses apart from each other. And so I knew him. And I brought my Stratocaster to him because it wasn't playing very well. And it was actually John Ingram, who worked here for a while, set the guitar up. And it played like a dream. And I had no idea what they did, but it just played great. I was playing a lot, very seriously with a jazz group called Fat Fingers.
Oh,
and we it was like, because I was playing a lot, I never knew really how a guitar felt when it was right. And it was right when they set it up. And so anyway, I'd say about a year later, Paul, actually about a year later, I brought Paul a guitar that I finished, a guitar body, a strap body, because I wanted to make some extra money.
Heck yeah.
Somebody finishing his guitars. So he didn't do anything with me, but then he called me about a year later. I don't know if it was a year later. I'm not sure how long.
Yeah.
And he asked me to come over and help him with their finishing. And I went over there, and it was kind of a mess. There was a lot of rejects, and I took it on, but I didn't start working right away with them. I buffed a few things out, and then I went back to the old place I worked at, finishing place.
Yeah.
And then I decided to leave that and go work with PRS. And that's where I started to start getting towards building guitars. At first, I was finishing room manager, and then I became the production manager. And about 2 years into that, I didn't like it very much. I was an artist. And so Paul wanted to start building guitars for the artists. They weren't having a lot of luck with getting artists. So he wanted to dedicate someone to building the guitars for the artists that he could work with. And that's what I started doing. And that's when I started building guitars.
Wow. And so you started, with Paul in 1985 and were with him till 2008?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah.
2009, real. Yeah.
And so, well, and I got to ask then what was the catalyst? Because, it's a huge leap. And I remember talking with Peter Wolf, who's been with you the whole time. What made you decide it's like, now's the time I need to do my own guitars? Because I know you and Paul are still friends and everything, but when you launched Knaggs, it was a big deal.
Well, I appreciate that, first of all. It's nice to hear. It really started long before I left. It started in 2000. At that time, they were trying to put a non-compete clause in at PRS. And ironically, it wasn't for guitar making. It was for a patent he and his father were working on.
Oh.
So none of us liked the sound of that. I didn't like the sound of, I just built guitars for this long, and now all of a sudden someone can tell me I can or whatever. It was just a strange thing.
Yeah.
So I started designing my own guitars at that point. And I would go over to my buddy's house in Bowie, and I would work in his garage over the weekend. And I would just draw, and I would start making the guitars that later became the guitars that, one of them's back there right now, the Severn.
That.
It started. So I started making these guitars. I was a Fender player, and I was a Gibson player, and so I played a Strat and I played an ES 125 when I was playing real seriously.
Right. So
my thinking was more towards that side of things, as far as designing goes.
Well, I was going to bring this up too, Joe. We're
in there,
Well, yeah, and your designs have always been so fluid. You know what I mean? Just all of the different, we're going to talk about a lot of the different innovations and everything, because one of the things that really caught me when I was looking at one of your earliest models and playing it was your innovative bridge.
Well, I appreciate that. I was an artist growing up too. Okay. And so I really like to draw, and there's some reason or another, guitar shapes seem to come to me.
Right.
I don't really know why. And I don't know if you've talked to many people that have had to draw guitars, because I did that at PRS too. And it's not really the easiest thing to draw a guitar shape that doesn't look like another guitar.
Exactly.
That's a big thing, and because you're always influenced by the stuff.
Sure.
So that's kind of one of the things that I think I'm saying that because that's where it really started was this kind of like love for drawing. And, and I always drew. I used to do duck stamp paintings, and different wildlife paintings, et cetera, et cetera. So I always enjoyed that.
Well, it always amazes me.
Of course, easy.
Right. Well, it always amazes me, and and being raised by a mom that was an art teacher, and I could not do art to save my life. I always enjoy seeing the sketches of the original, instruments and everything else, whether they're done on an envelope or a napkin or whatever, but the original thought or a guitar shape or a bass shape, or, it's like going, it always intrigues me, Joe, to see what that started out as and then the evolution to where how different it is, because also, your headstocks are very different. And even how you did your logo to me with Knaggs has always been very artistic.
Well, I appreciate that. The logo actually was designed by, part of the logo was designed by Marcus Caius in Germany. And I did the circle and the lines, but he did the actual Knaggs writing. Wow. He did that font.
Yeah.
So, and it's a beautiful font. So,
well, how did you come up with, and I want to talk about some of the other innovations that you've done with Knaggs guitars over the years, but with the first hardtail, because once again, discussing that to where it's one solid piece. I mean, whereas you and I know with most instruments, with whatever brand, Fender, Gibson, on and on, they're always independent pieces, the stop tail and then the bridge where the strings go over. And yours was the first one I'd ever seen to where the whole end tailpiece was one piece, but it also helped the sustain and the connection to the body.
So there's a few different bridges. The first one, the hardtail that's on the chop tank, okay? That was actually the first bridge that I came up with. That was, and the way that came about was I was looking at a Telecaster and the front of the bridge wasn't screwed down. They weren't screwed down.
No.
And it was kind of sitting up a little bit. And I was like, well, that doesn't seem very good to me. And I designed a bridge plate that, first of all, was thicker.
Right.
And it screwed down in the front. And it was made out of steel, hardened steel. So it was made out of steel. So were the Telecaster bridges back in the day. They make them out of brass maybe now. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think the bell, but I think the front,
stamped, they were stamped which was brilliant, by the way. I had to get it. It was brilliant. So anyway, that was what really inspired me to want to go out on my own.
Yeah.
Because I made that bridge and we put that bridge on. It was the chop tank I actually originally designed. I had designed some other guitars before that. But the chop tank was one that I designed, and we put that bridge on that guitar. This was me and my buddy Eric, okay? And I strung the guitar up and I strummed it, and I'd never heard a guitar ring like that. And then that's when I was like, we got something here. I got something here, and that inspired me to kind of go forward a little bit. Before that, I had actually designed, this was in my garage, like before 2000. And my friend actually has a guitar, my friend Glenn, who's a good player. I wanted to make a Stratocaster style guitar that was really thick and hollow. Okay.
Yeah.
And so I
like a jazz guitar.
Well, yeah, it's sort of like a jazz guitar, because I played a 61 Strat, and I always thought about like a big hollow one. Okay. And the idea I had was to put different pick guards on the guitar to make it sound different. It would be like changing the top on an acoustic guitar from cedar to spruce to mahogany. Okay.
Yeah.
So I made this hollow guitar. I actually took Forstner bit And at that time, I was actually doing the arch top at PRS, so I learned that whole system of like drilling down and then carving it out. And I did that, and I put that together, and it's not quite the Severn, but it's sort of like the Severn. But that was the first guitar I actually made on my own outside of PRS.
Wow.
And that one actually sold for a set of golf clubs. I was just starting to play golf when I was really into it. But anyway, it's a cool guitar, and Glenn still plays it to this day. And then I started designing the Severn.
Mhm.
Then I started designing the chop tank. But the bridge on the chop tank was my first original bridge. Okay, so there.
And that was the bridge that really caught my eye and my ear with Knaggs Guitar.
Are you thinking about on the chop tank, right?
Yep.
Because it's a plate. Where the influence bridge is different.
Right.
Okay. So anyway, that was that, and actually took that and cut it in half and tried putting a pin in to make it a tremolo.
Ah.
And the pin didn't work too good. It would bind and it would go out of tune. And so then came up with the system where it put holes on each side and some ball bearings and pins. Okay.
Yep.
And so that floated really well. So that's that bridge. The Chesapeake Trem Bridge is the hardtail bridge cut in half. Okay.
Right.
Not in half, but cut with these dog pin screws. Okay. And ball bearings that it rides on. So you screw that plate down to the body.
Uh-huh.
The back part floats. Not like the knife edge screws of a regular trem system, but more like a hinge.
Well, it makes so much sense too, Joe, with the ball bearings, because then you're going to have a more fluid flow than you do with like the knife edge. And as we know with the other designs where you had the screws going into the wood and the bridges would not come back to original position after you use the tremolo.
I was just talking to one of our new dealers, Bernie Williams, I think. Bernie Williams. And they were saying that they were messing with the tremolo and they took the guitar. They just got the guitars in. And they said they were taking it and they were hitting it and dive bombing. He said it just come right back in tune every time. So that was good to hear.
Right. It means your design is correct.
Those ball bearings, they allow it to go back to the spot. There's not resistance there.
Right.
And the big thing, it's not necessarily a big thing, but one of the features is that plate is screwed down to a guitar. So it doesn't matter if it's swamp ash that's soft. It doesn't matter if it's quilt maple. It's screwed down with long enough screws that it holds the plate steady.
Yeah.
And then that tremolo floats on that. So it's very independent to the wood itself, where knife edges and two pivot points like on Floyd's, and they're dependent on that one pivot spot.
Yep.
Okay. It's okay. It's good design too, but this definitely makes it more stable. And the biggest thing to me that I really hear is it really allows the guitar to ring.
Yeah.
Okay. The sound of those saddles, all right,
Yeah.
that are back on the back part, they get transferred into that front plate really well, and that goes more into the middle of the body.
And it seems like with all of your bridges, though, Joe, I was going to say, it seems what I noticed with every one of the Knaggs guitars that I've played over the years, with your electrics, to where they always have superior sustain.
That's what we live for.
I mean, but also it's I want to say it. It's superior sustain without having to have something like a Fernandez Sustainiac or something,
right?
Or something electronically augmented. It's the metal and the wood and how you design it to where it's like they just ring.
Yeah, we like to call it the Knaggs ring. I can say this, Eric, like, there's times when I come in here in the morning time before everyone's here.
Yeah.
And I love when we build relics because I can pick them up and I can do whatever and not worry about screwing them up. So I can really go at them and play them. The one thing that I really notice is I really notice that ring when I strum our guitar. It's like it just really is vibrating and it's really alive.
Huh?
I actually was comparing the guitar to a Sir the guy had, and the Sir was a very nice guitar.
Yeah.
But boy, it sounded so different. Comparing them night and day, where someone would hand me the one, I'd strum it. They'd hand me the Sir, I'd strum it. And the one girl, Mackenzie, who's a bass player, one of our endorsers, she's a great bass player. It was her father's Sir, and she was looking over at me like thumbs up to the Knaggs. It just when I never really heard it compared to that guitar like that.
Well, especially when you're in the shop building all the time and you're mainly hearing your own Knaggs guitars because you don't get out that much to be able to taste test all the other ones.
Right, exactly. But I will say that's what I hear. That's the biggest thing. And people ask me what's the difference, and that's the difference to me. I hear that difference.
But I didn't know. I mean, certainly when I played your earlier models and your later models, to where I didn't know if it was the bridge, I didn't know if it was the choices of wood, the glued in. I didn't know. I didn't know what the secret sauce was, Joe.
Well, it kind of is all of the above, but the bridges certainly make a big difference.
Yeah, and also the pitch of the headstock on yours. Did you select that pitch for a certain reason? Because it's like you just notice. I mean, and once again, you and I are both fans of the shape of guitars, and they're playable artwork. But it's like it seems like you really put a lot of thought, Joe, into every one of the details of your Knaggs guitars, because you notice just like with the choice of the pitch of the headstock, because sometimes they're very severe and you end up with a breaking point. Sometimes that will bind up in the nut also.
Well, that's true. So you got two different pitches. Okay. You got the influence models, and that's a steeper angle. And then you got the chest peak models, which are, and the chest peak models are pitched at a spot where you don't need a string tree. Okay. It sits on the side and you don't need a string tree. Okay.
I know that.
Or with the fenders, I mean, and again, it's brilliant. Leo designed this neck made out of a 1-inch slab of wood. You can get 1-inch slabs of wood everywhere, and they just cut it down. So the pitch isn't very much. So you needed a string tree on there. It's enough for the bass strings, but not for the high E and the B, And so with the pitch on ours, it's enough that you don't need that on there to get the string to not want to pop up or not ride in the nut properly.
Right.
So, and of course with the tremolo, it's at a spot where it makes it a little bit, it makes it so that you can use the tremolo and it's not so steep that it goes out of tune.
Exactly.
Now our Knaggs trem is steeper, and I was kind of wondering about that, but we haven't had any problems with it. You just use graphite nut, so
right. But I was going to bring up also to where even early on, and certainly you've evolved this with so many unique finishes, but also some of the choices of wood. Some of the wood choices that you went with were not always the typical wood choices that everybody else was building with. Why? What was that on purpose?
You're talking about on which models?
On several of the models, you went down a path to where, it's like there was like a wood choice. I'm like going, well, that's like before other people picked up those woods as building wood guitars from them, you started building with them early.
Well, I think about mahogany, and people have been using mahogany, and I think about East Indian, and I think about ebony, and that's all being used. Alder, forever, Strats,
right?
Swamp ash. The one thing we did put maple tops on alder backs. That could be kind of unique. And there's certainly some unique woods that we used, like spalt maple.
Yep, that was one of the ones I was thinking of.
Things like that. The spalt maple is kind of a unique looks thing, but that's where the bridge comes in, okay? Because we can take a Chesapeake bridge and screw that into that spalt maple, and it's stable enough, okay? You just got to use long enough screws. So that's where the bridge comes in handy with, especially something like that. So if you put knife edge screws in spalt maple, they're going to come loose in 2 weeks.
Totally. So yeah, sustain.
That's where you're able to use some different woods that you usually wouldn't be able to use.
Well, and same thing with your finishes too, to where it seems like a lot of the finishes that you do tend to you lean towards finishes that accentuate the grain of the wood in your electrics, which to me was always something that you saw more in acoustics instead of electrics.
Yeah, the stain jobs are definitely, something that's doing that. We were talking about this today. And it's, you want to talk about innovations. Okay?
Yeah.
So when I was at PRS, I actually came up with the double stain jobs. Okay.
Wow.
Michael Dealey, who is our sales manager, him and I worked together since the beginning. He was actually the first employee at PRS. Well, he got a bass, okay? It was an employee guitar, but he got one of the prototype basses. And he said to me back then, he just reminded me of this today, that he was going for a sort of like a Koa look, And I took his bass and I stained it brown and I sanded it out and then I put yellow over top of that. And that was the original double stain job. I remember Michael Reed saying, man, we can take maple that's not as curly and do this with it to make it look a lot more curly. So he was excited because he could make less curly wood look more curly. But anyway, that started that whole double stain job thing.
Yeah, and I love the double stain look.
Everybody's doing it these days.
Yeah, but also to innovate it early on like that, and the same thing even, with some of your models too on it, Joe, to where it's like you've got like the edge. It's like it seems artistic the way you have the edge around the guitars, to where it seems like some models are trying to go so ergonomic that they kind of lose the shape of the guitar. Whereas I know with yours, you will do it to where, you keep form, I guess is the best way I can say it.
I got you. Yeah. I never really looked at it that way, but so, yeah. And another thing we did is the perf in the guitars. That's something I actually came up with that when I was laying in bed with cancer. And I was just thinking to myself that, you walk into a music store and there's 1,000 guitars in there. What's going to make it stand out? What's going to make a guitar? And that's where we came up with the double perf thing. I came back into the shop and Danny and I worked on it and came up with, because what I wanted to be able to do was stain a part of the guitar a certain color and then stain the other part a completely different color. Well, if you don't have the perf in between, it'll bleed into each other. Okay?
Right.
So that's what it did. And then perf around the body so that you could have natural maple binding.
Yeah.
Okay. That came farther in.
Yeah. And that binding on your guitars looks so good.
Yeah. So anyway, that was another thing that's been kind of, we do that a lot. We do the single perf on all the influence models.
Right.
So that you have binding.
Yeah. Which I love that. To me, it looks classy.
Thank you. Yeah, it leaves the wood there, instead of putting plastic binding on it, which looks good too. But, there's something cool about the wood. It's part of the top.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't.
You can't tell it. You can't tell it's part of the top. To me, when I look at it visually, Joe, it looks like it is bound in wood.
Right, exactly. Yeah, they look deeper and say, oh, that curl keeps going through there, so.
That is such a neat trick. Well, I was going to bring up too, how you eventually, what year did you decide to start doing like the acoustic guitars? Because I played some of your early models that you first did, and they were just totally works of art. I mean, they were playable works of art with those first Knaggs acoustics that you were creating. I know you're still doing them, but like around what year did you launch those?
So I was building acoustics before I started the business. That
Really?
that was two of the that was two of the models that I designed before we started Knaggs Guitars. The Patuxent and the Potomac.
Yep.
Okay. And the Potomac's just a non-cutaway, same as the Patuxent. So I had a Collins C10, and it was a great guitar, wonderful.
Yeah.
It didn't have very much bass. So I wanted to make a guitar like the C10, but with more bass. So I took a dreadnought shape, and I took the Collins C10, and I combined those two shapes together to make the Patuxents. So it's almost the size of a dreadnought, but not as long and not as big as a dreadnought. The bout is almost as wide, but then it kind of goes towards the OM size. You know what I mean? So anyway, that was the concept behind that, and I did that, and then so it was just making acoustics here and there. Like we brought two of the guitars that I made before we started the business to NAMM that original year. It actually changed the headstock to say Knaggs on it because it said Chesapeake before.
So you had to update the headstocks.
That did, yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny because I think so frequently, Joe, it happens at the NAMM shows to where we'll see something and play something, and then you find out, it's like, oh yeah, that was a prototype. It's like we only built one of those. That was just for the show.
Right. Yeah.
But you've done pretty well with the acoustic guitars, though.
Well, I mean, keep in mind too, we did what was called the Kapawas, and they were built by Godin.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure if you're thinking about those, but the Patuxent and Potomac, I think we're probably up to about 100 now or something like that on those. We really only do about 12 a year.
Yeah.
10 to 12 a year. But we also did the Potomac with Steve Stevens. We did a Potomac SS. So that we just did. In fact, I was telling you earlier that I redid a body on his guitar because the top cracked. He lives in Las Vegas where the humidity's like negative 10%, and the top cracked, and which he said all of his acoustics did that there.
Yeah.
Well, I just built a new body for it and took the neck and reset it, and we just finished it actually, and it's ready to go out to him.
Well, speaking of which, we were talking about, some of the artists that have played Knaggs guitars and continue to play Knaggs instruments over the years. And Steve Stevens is one of those, being a high profile one who has certainly brought a lot of attention to your brand. I mean, especially with Billy Idol's new album that came out last year. And I think, didn't Billy get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this year?
He sure did, yeah. Well, and of course, Steve Stevens is kind of like a part of that. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's kind of cool because they always kind of do it together. And on that note, I just want to mention Peter, because Peter Wolf, he knew Steve Stevens from the Hamer days, okay, back when Peter was in Germany. And what happened with Steve was Peter just Facebook messaged him and said, "Hey, are you interested in doing a model with us?" And Steve said, "Yeah, I'm interested." So Steve knew I'd built the guitar for him at PRS. So he was interested, and Peter kind of got him to come on board, and the rest is history. We built one model for him, and then we did a few of those, and then we built another one, and ended up with the SSC, which is a great guitar. So,
well, and you've got so many. What are the most popular guitars that Knaggs is building right now in your shop, Jeff?
The most popular guitar is the Kanai. Okay, it's the single cutaway. It's the one behind me, the gold top one.
That's one of my favorites to play by Knaggs. It's like it just always feels good in your hands, and it sounds great, and the sustain just rings on those.
Well, thank you. That's got the influence bridge, which is a one-piece tunematic, okay? That's where it took, instead of the two pieces, I made it all one piece.
Yeah.
So that the sound that was back at the back of the bridge where the string balls are, so that string, because there's a lot of sound that's made back there, you don't realize it, but it's that upper harmonic, and I wanted that to go into the rest of the bridge. And so that goes through there, and then the strings are pressing down on that tunematic into the brass plate, and those screws, those two screws are screwed into the brass plate, and then down into the wood. So they're stabilized also, So that's one of the reasons why you're getting that sustain out of that model. The other thing is that back on that model is carved. So the guitar is thick. It's thicker than a Les Paul at the butt. And then it goes down skinnier.
Yeah.
And it's carved. That actually is carved the way I carved that original guitar I made. The one I was telling you about.
Yeah.
The back is carved that same kind of way. So it's ergonomically, it wraps around your body.
Right.
And the Chenna is the same way. Those two models. So
those are the two most popular?
Well, the Knaggs is the most popular, and then the Severum.
Yeah.
The other one that's back here, okay?
Mhm.
And then the Chenna after that. So those three are the most popular. And then we do some Kias, and we do some chop tanks also. And of course, there's the artist models too.
Oh, yeah.
The TS, the Knaggs TS is very popular. That's the Knaggs, except for thick and without the back carved, the way I was talking about. It's got a belly carved, but not like that. It's not contoured.
And I got to ask you this too, Joe, like with your pickup choices, how do you decide what pickups you're putting with which guitar?
So you start with Steve's guitar. Steve's the one who picked what we were using on that in the SSC, okay? He worked with bare knuckles forever. The Knaggs and the influence models, we just recently started using Lollar, and they're called Imperial Ks, okay? Because what we did is we took a set of Imperials and we worked with Lollar to design them the way we wanted them to sound with that guitar. That guitar has a little more high end, so I really wanted the pickups to be a little bit, I wouldn't call it darker, but toned down a little bit as far as the high end that comes out of the pickup. So
that makes sense.
That's how we decided that. I've always been a fan of Fralin Blue Specials.
Yeah.
That's what I had in my original chop tanks, and I think that they're great pickups. They're a little meatier than regular Strat pickups, and I think Lindy does a brilliant job with single coil pickups.
I agree.
And to me, I always knew Lollar for their P90s.
Yes. Huge fan of their P90s.
But it was nice that we were able to work with, and they're great guys at Lollar. And we were able to work with them on sort of, making our own little adjustments on the Imperial Ks.
Yeah, it's nice when you can fine tune them to your specifications, Joe, to achieve what you want to help, for the nuances with the guitar. Because the wood, the finishes. I mean,
the bridges.
Yeah, and the bridges, obviously.
That makes a big difference with what pickups you're using.
Totally. Well, and also, and we didn't talk on this much, but with your finishes, we were talking about the double staining and stuff. But a lot of the finishes that you have done with Knaggs guitars kind of make them stand out also. And did that come from your early experience, working with finishes?
Absolutely. Understanding colors is a big deal, and really understanding what the dyes do, okay? Because different dyes act differently. And what I mean by that is like blues act differently than red does. That acts differently than yellow, okay? Because what a lot of people don't realize is that these dyes are all made from raw materials, okay? For instance, blue is usually made from cobalt. Okay. Yellows are usually made from sulfur.
Huh.
I'm not sure about that with what they do. Yeah, but reds are made with something else. Okay. So there's certain weights with those chemicals and how they'll penetrate. We're using aniline dye stains mostly. We use alcohol dye stain a little bit, but mostly water-based aniline dye stains. You can mix them with alcohol too, but the way they'll penetrate is different per the color. Okay,
Right.
so
And probably also per the porousness of the wood that you're staining.
well, that's a factor too. All that comes into play. Yeah, I say to these guys in here all the time, you especially notice it when you're training a new person, okay? We know millions of things. You just don't really realize it until you start talking about it.
Right.
And that's through the years and years and years of building, and it's through the years and years of doing stuff wrong. So anyway, it's something that it's kind of a little bit fascinating. And when someone comes in, you start realizing it. You're showing them what 80 grit is. A lot of people don't realize that 80 grit because there's 80 particles per a measurement.
Right.
And what does 150 grit do? What does 320 do? Okay, where do the scratches disappear? Or the human eye can't see them anymore. These are all things that you take for granted until you start showing somebody this stuff.
Well, like, how many guitars are you building with your team, Joe, at Knaggs? It's like, how many guitars are you guys doing, like, a month, a year? I mean, is there a goal, or is it just kind of depend on some of the custom orders and everything else? I mean, what's the goal?
The goal really is, well, I tell you, the max that we ever got up to was about 52 guitars, 53 guitars a month. Okay. Right now sales are down. Sales are down across the board with guitar making. It's anyway, without getting into the realities or the reasons. But so right now we've cut back some, and we're making about 10 guitars a week now, about 32 to 40 guitars a month.
Yeah.
So I guess that's about what, 480, 410, somewhere, around there. And that depends on what they are. Because if they're Knaggs with binding on the neck, and that all takes longer. If we're all KJs, that would take shorter. You got to make 3 KJs to one of these, because it's always about making money.
Right.
As far
It's got to be sustainable to keep the company going.
So yeah, our goal right now is like 10 a week.
Well, and I want to talk about, we mentioned Steve Stevens, but who are some of the other major artists right now that are playing Knaggs guitars that people joining the show may not realize that they're playing your guitars in the studio and out on tour?
So first of all, I want to mention Peter. Peter is my business partner, okay? And Peter started the business with me in 2009, okay? We also brought Danny Dito from PRS over, which was very nice. Danny's R&B guy. But Peter and I started the business, and one of the reasons I bring him up is because Peter's dealing with all the artists, all right, for the most part.
Right.
But some of the other artists that we deal with is, of course, Billy Morrison with Steve Stevens. We got our own model with him, Larry Mitchell. Eric Steckel is one of our main artists. He's a great, great player. There is Eric Rachmani of Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
Eric, a little story about Eric. My daughter actually played Revolution. We were down at the beach when she was about 14. And I was like, these guys are interesting. It's just different sound,
Yeah.
especially his voice. It catches you,
Mm-hmm.
It's like soothing, sort of. And anyway, so I kind of left on, but it wasn't until a few years ago, and Peter said to me, "Yeah, I got a message from Eric Rachmani of Revolution." I said, "What? Yeah, yeah, call him back, man, immediately." Well, anyway, and Eric's been great ever since. Peter's friends with him. I'm friends with him. He's just the greatest guy. So anyway, there's Eric Rachmani. There's Nashville guys, Ben Miller, Tyler Tomlinson, uh, um, Dave.
I'm gonna have to have Tyler on the TV show, and I told you that I had Ben Miller on the Rock and Review TV show years ago with your guitars too, and so that's and Ben and I have known each other since I moved back here to Nashville in 2011.
I haven't talked to Ben in so long, and I need to talk to him. So yeah,
it's also it has to be weird though too, Joe, to where some of these musicians that you listen to, just like with the Revolution and Steve Stevens and everything, and now you're working with these artists directly, and they're like texted you, hey, I'm playing this, I'm playing a sold out venue here with your guitar. Does it seem kind of different?
Yeah, it does. I would say, especially say with a guy like Steve, because there's that fame. When you've met these guys, Eric. When you meet them, you know that they live a little different life.
Right.
And this happened to me with when I was with PRS. It was with John McLaughlin, okay?
Oh yeah.
And John is my idol. All right.
Oh my gosh, what a musician.
My favorites. I put him in the top 5 of my favorites,
Uh-huh.
And I went back and was talking to Jeff. First of all, I talked to him on the phone a lot. And we were talking about our kids and blah, 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 blah. And so I went and saw him, and he wouldn't let me leave. I was like, I'm going to leave you go because I know you try. He goes, Joe, don't go anywhere. He's like, this is great, man. We're talking about guitars. And this is a difference. When you talk to those guys, you're actually bringing them something.
Right.
Okay? Or girls.
Yeah.
99% of the time, someone's asking them for something.
Ah, you're right, Joe. I never thought of it that way.
Instead, you're bringing them, and it's not just it's not a envelope with a card in it going, look at it's a guitar.
Yeah.
So they have a nice respect for that, and it's also this cool thing to learn about for them. They're playing them all the time. Steve, hey, Steve talks to me about guitars all the time, neck shapes, and so it's kind of like you got 70 guitars back there. It's a different world. Anyway, so I just say that about those guys. So it's different in that way.
Mm-hmm. And it's a different conversation.
I've never been starstruck. It doesn't really go that way for me, but it is different, So
well, I think also, Joe, and certainly, from your perspective and from mine, like when I'm interviewing, I'm talking about them. I'm talking them up. But with you, like you said, I mean, you're creating playable artwork for them that they are going to use as a tool. And most artists are very attached to their instruments.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not a passive relationship.
I said the only way to get Steve Stevens to play our guitars is to make a better guitar than what he's playing.
Exactly.
That's the only way. He's not going to change. Steve is not, Steve plays what Steve wants to play, and I don't blame him.
Well,
Some of these guys are like that, and so, you got to build a guitar that they pick up and go, wow, okay. It turns their head all of a sudden. I mean, it's hard to put down your old Strat that you played all your life or whatever, so, and they don't always do that neither. Sometimes they do both, so that's cool too. That's nice. That's a nice thing too,
Well, but also I think it's a compliment to you and your team, Joe, to where a major artist is selecting a Knaggs instrument to play instead of a vintage guitar that they've had for decades. And they're taking your guitar out on the road. They're taking your guitar into the studio. I mean, just like the video I think I saw on your social media and on everything like a few days ago, where there was Steve with Billy Idol on a major stage, playing your guitar.
Right.
I mean, we can't buy that kind of advertisement. You know what I mean? That's, because when you see, it's not, they're playing it because they want to. Steve, like you said, Steve can play whatever he wants. Same with Larry, same with, so many of these artists that play your Knaggs guitars, they can play whatever they want. And so that they choose to work with you and with Knaggs, and they can hear and feel the difference. Says a lot.
Yeah, and a big part of it, they're dealing with Peter. They're talking to Peter all the time. I mean, that has a lot to do with it because that relationship certainly starts the want to try them and play them.
Well, and Peter is so easy with he knows everybody, and he's just kind of cool. And so, it's easy for him to move in the artist circus.
Gotcha. So a couple other artists I want to mention. One of them that I listen to all the time, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, Ben the Cloud.
Yep.
He's with All Them Witches.
Yep.
I mean, they just came out with a new release, and I tell you, man, Ben can really play.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
He just plays the greatest stuff, when I listen to it. Anyway, I love the way he plays. He plays great slide. He just plays some really, really cool stuff back there. It's not necessarily flashy, it's more like, wow, that's really good. It's almost like listening to Hendrix back there or something.
A very versatile artist.
Yeah, he's a great guy. And then, of course, there's all kinds of other ones too. Jerry Leonard is someone who plays our stuff. You know who Jerry is?
Yeah.
He's great, man. And Peter's good friends with him. So, a bunch of great players, a bunch of local players too. Around here, Mike McHenry and Jeff Washington and Todd from Bergen.
So good.
We're reaching out a lot of different genres, different players. So it's nice.
Well, and how does it work out, Joe? Because I mean, certainly we're going to have people who are joining, the Gear Gab podcast, and they may want to get their hands on a Knaggs guitar and try it out. I mean, how do you work with dealers carrying your guitars, having examples of your guitars to play wherever people are?
So we have different dealers, okay, obviously, and some of them are brick fronts, some of them aren't, but they can always go to the shops that have them in there, like, for instance, Guitars to Be Played in Nashville, okay?
Yep.
Josh is a great guy. Josh carries guitars in there. Eastchester Music in New York City. I forget what it's called. It's up there, North New York.
Yeah.
But New York City, the northern part. Rebel Guitars in Alabama, Northerner in Canada. Joel does a lot of stuff with us. These are all different G-Brats in Texas. So they can call, and I'm sure that the dealer can figure out a way to get a guitar into their hands.
Right.
So
because I think that's always still the ultimate sales tool. It's, it's one thing. It's like you and I were talking about when we started the conversation, Joe. You're looking at the catalog, or, it's like my wife always kids me because, anytime I'm looking at my phone, I'm usually scrolling guitars. I can't help it. But it's like, and she knows it. But it's like, but it's one thing to see a guitar and appreciate how it looks or the pickups it has or the hardware or the finish. But it's another thing when you got it in your hands and when you plug it in.
I think that's the only way to really get convinced to buy one of our guitars is to play it. I really do.
I agree.
Well, you maybe are convinced by the looks, that certainly can catch your eye. And there's people who buy on that. But most people who get our guitars, we have people who have bought, and I don't know, maybe you're one of them, Eric, who bought 40 guitars. And it's like they just kind of keep buying. So, I think that it's what I was talking about earlier. When you strum it and you get that ring and you get the comfort, and we build a really good guitar. You know what I mean? Like, not just pretty and not just ringing, but playability is great. So that all adds up. And yeah, I think that's important. I mean, a couple other dealers I want to mention. Wilcut's a big dealer of ours.
Oh, it's a great deal.
And then Peach in England and Station in Germany. We just opened a new dealer in Yokohama, Japan, named Basic Tonic. So, Wild Guitars in Mexico. So,
Yeah.
we're getting different dealers in different places. There's one in Thailand. So we're getting out there slowly but surely,
Well, and I think that the instruments are speaking because like you and I were talking the other day, Joe, before we, hopped on to do the show, to where you're coming up on 20 years. You're not far away. I mean, it's going to be the 20-year anniversary of Knaggs Guitars. You're going to have to do something big.
Well, that's a good point. Maybe now is the time to start working on that. Huh?
Start making the plan. Well, I want to give a shout out real quick to our partner for Gear Gab, which is Acoustic Coffee Company, and all guests that join the show will be getting a bag of acoustic coffee. And if you want to try it, use the code Gear Gab as one word, and you get 20% off. But Joe, for coming on the show, will be getting a free bag of coffee.
Oh, well, that's nice.
Yeah, I mean, we're musicians. We love coffee. So, and I wanted to ask you this too, Joe. With your website and with the social media and everything else, what are you looking to launch or do new for this year, going forward with Knaggs?
The new models for this year that we have going now is Kanai Hollow Body, which is a great guitar. I mean, it's such a nice weight when you pick it up, and it's really cool. It's got a different sound than the Kanai. We have the Kanai Trem. Okay. That's a really, really good model, utilizing our trem bridge on one of our influence models. It's different scale length, of course, 24 3/4.
Yeah.
So, the strings are a little looser and it definitely feels different. A bigger neck. It's not, that other feeling of the 6 on the side. It's a really, really nice guitar. We did the Eric Steckel Sandstorm. Maybe we'll be going towards a 250th anniversary limited edition would be good. So
That'd be nice.
we're talking about that. So
In your spare time, right?
yeah. I'm trying to think of any other new models that we got going on. We have a lot of different models already. So we're trying to make sure that we are, like for instance, we talked about the Kanai on this show. A lot of people don't even know what the Kanai is. So it's great to get that out there and get people to learn about, okay, this is what Knaggs does. They make Kanais, they make Severns.
Yep.
It's like we're trying to make sure we're a little bit cautious with how many different models we have out there.
Yeah. And also they're vastly different guitars.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Which I love, like you said, with, having, like with the 6 on the side or with your standard, 3 on a side headstock. It's like, you've carved out your own designs and your own shapes to where, once again, being a player, and a musician just like yourself, I know when I'm seeing a Knaggs guitar. I know it as whether I'm seeing somebody on stage or I'm at the NAMM shows or whatever else. It's like, I know a Knaggs when I see it right off the bat.
Awesome. Well, that's great to hear. That's really good. By the way, we came up with it, and Michael was telling me it was 2024. That's how fast time's going. But the Chenna A, okay, which is our Chenna, but it's completely hollow. It's braced. Okay. Wow. So the bracing is actually we carve the bracing into the top. So we don't brace it with different pieces of bracing. We actually use the screws from the top.
That's
It's a really, really cool guitar. Definitely very alive and round sounding, sort of jazz players or whatever, So
I can't imagine the method of having to do that though, Joe. To where you're carving out the inside and then you're carving the braces from. I mean, wow,
it's kind of cool actually.
that's a lot of work. I mean, you're gonna have to do more videos, and I always enjoy your videos too. That you showing you around the shop, but you're gonna have to, not give away the trade secrets. But I kind of like it when you're wandering around the shop showing stuff sometimes too.
All right. Well, I'll keep that in mind and we'll do some of that.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to come by the shop too next time I'm in your area.
That would be great. I got to come by your place.
Oh, you got totally, especially when I have one of your guests on the TV show. You got to come in and that would be great. I'll take you out for hot chicken or we'll get some Nashville food.
It sounds fantastic.
Well, I want to make sure also for everybody joining the podcast, whether they're viewing it or listening to it, Joe, so that they have the website and the best way to get to, check out the guitars, to find the dealers, to get to know Knaggs Guitars better, social media and everything. Where should the viewers go and the listeners?
So the website is just www.knaggsguitars. Okay. I think that's right. But, and then we're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. Peter's all over the place out there on social media. I mean, he really is working every angle. And that's all either under Knaggs Guitars site or it's under the Knagsters, okay, which is a small group, okay, sort of like a forum,
Yeah, the small but mighty.
Not like that. So, so that's the best place to see some of our stuff. We'll be working on the website, trying to get that a little bit more, I don't know what to say, modernized.
Yeah. Well, and also user-friendly, and especially, I think it's so incredible, Joe, and congratulations on gaining more international, music, stores carrying the guitars so that people can go into those areas and play the instruments and see them in person.
Well, thank you. Yeah, another one's Art of Guitar in Dubai, and I think it's Qatar. I forget what country, but they're over in the Middle Eastern countries.
Yeah.
A bunch of different ones. So, and that's again Peter. Peter's working on that all the time. So,
well, next time we'll have to invite him on the show too.
That would be great.
Well, I just want to, Joe Knaggs, I want to thank you so much for coming on the Gear Gab podcast to talk with us about the incredible innovations with Knaggs Guitars that you've done and the new instruments. And we can't wait to check out the new website. And just thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, thank you very much, Eric. And I really, really appreciate it. And I appreciate everybody listening and watching. It's fantastic. I would have never dreamed it.
Thanks, Joe.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining the Gear Gab Podcast with Eric Dahl. Subscribe to our weekly conversations on your favorite platform. And if you like what you hear, don't forget to leave us a review. Follow us on social media at Gear Gab Podcast. You'll never know who our next guest will be.